Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing okay and I hope you enjoyed this video. Now today I decided to work in Coloriage Wild 3 and this is by Emmanuel Colin, and I don't think it's watercolour paper in this colouring book, but if it's not, it's the closest thing that I've come to find in any sort of colouring book. The paper quality is absolutely fantastic. Now I'm using some new paints that I did purchase off Etsy. I did put the name over on screen right at the start of the video, and the company is called Nectar's Watercolour, and I did purchase these off Etsy. I do end up using my Winsor & Newton Cotman set as well because I wanted to put a purple undertone under the actual painting. Now this set that I purchased from Etsy, it is classed as a skin tone set, but it did take a little bit of practice and mixing the different colours to get the skin tone that I was happy with. You did see me base the skin as well then with just a wash of clean water, just so I could do the wet on wet technique with the skin. Now while that's drying, before I go in with the second layer, I go straight in onto the hair, and I'm using the same palette as well, but a really washed down brown colour. Now I did plan on doing this video as a real time, me talking throughout the video, but unfortunately my daughter's been ill these past couple of days with a bit of a cold and a cough, so she's not been going to nursery. Whether she'll be going or not tomorrow is a different thing, so I hope you don't mind that it is more of a time lapse, but I am doing the voiceover nonetheless. So let's work on that skin again. So again, I'm doing the wet on wet technique. I've let that purple undertone completely dry before doing this next step, and that is just clean water. So the watercolour brush that I use for the wet on wet technique, just for popping the clean water on the page, is the Jackson's Arts Quill brush in size 6. Now I do find that this brush holds a lot of water. Now this is a very similar watercolour brush as well. This one's from Winsor & Newton and it's a pure squirrel size 1 brush. Now this one is excellent for holding a lot of paint and spreading it around evenly on the page. If I had one recommendation, or one thing that I could say back to myself when I first started doing watercolouring, is don't buy the cheap watercolour brushes. Now try and invest, even if it's just a little bit more, in nicer watercolour brushes, because I myself have bought the cheaper sets, like I've got 10 brushes, 15 brushes, and they say that they're multi-use. They're lying, they're definitely not multi-use. Now that I've tried more of a higher end watercolour brush, I can definitely tell the difference, and it makes your life so much easier. With the right brush and the right paper, it will make your life easier. The other brand of watercolour brushes that I am using in this video are the Billy Shorewell, or Shorewell, I don't know how you pronounce that, I think it's Shorewell, and I'm using a size 6, which is a little bit of a larger brush, which is that one that you just saw then, and I'm switched over to a size 2. I wasn't too happy with how the hair turned out. I do end up coming back later on in the video and fixing it and blending more of the colours together and adding a bit of a darker tone. So the trick that I have found with colouring or painting any sort of skin tone, it's thin layers, and make sure you're letting the layer before dry completely before you go ahead and do another layer. Now if I had all the time in the world I would do non-stop watercolouring, but I find that because I'm having to let it dry naturally, I don't like using the heat gun on certain papers or in certain books because it does crinkle the paper and it does affect the overall outcome. So I do try to let it naturally dry, but if I did have all the time in the world, this is probably one of the things that I'd be doing most. But because I do spend a lot of time waiting for the paint to dry, I do try and do different areas while I'm letting the other side dry, but sometimes you just can't do that and you have to just wait and be a little bit more patient. But yeah, just use thin layers each time. So while the skin tone is drying, I'm just going ahead and working on the hair again, and I am glad that I did end up going back and fixing this stage of the painting. So if you do like the video or you like anything that I produce on YouTube, then please do subscribe. I've noticed that there's about 50% of you that watch my videos and aren't actually subscribed, so please do. I'm really happy with how the skin tone turned out on this painting. I'm really happy. It just goes to show practice, practice, practice. If you want to get better at something, you really do need to practice and do it over and over and over. And I'm extremely proud of myself on this painting. Now I've had to switch over and use my Winsor & Newton Cotman palette here because I didn't have the right toned colours or anything that I wanted in the skin tone palette, in the Nectar watercolours palette, but I just did the beak and the eyes in a orangey yellow colour, and then I'm just basting the whole of the owl in the brown colour from the original palette that I was using. While our little owl friend is drying, I'm going in with the exact same brown colour, but it's not watered down, it's straight from the palette. And I'm just doing these little twigs, the little crown, they're cute. And I'm using the exact same colour to do a little bit more detail on the owl. Now I will apologise because I wasn't looking at the camera and I was getting a little bit carried away, and I ended up not pushing the picture up into frame, but it only lasts for a minute or two. Again, I do apologise. I'm just adding a little bit of a dull green to the ivy leaves. I didn't want these to pop out, I didn't want them to be the focus of the picture. Now, my favourite part, the background. I'm doing the wet on wet technique and I'm using the same colour from the Winsor & Newton palette, the same colour that I did the eyes and the beak of the owl, and I'm just popping the colour on and letting it bleed, letting it do whatever it wants to do and go sort of wherever it wants to go. And I do end up using a little bit of salt just to show you this technique as well. Now I have tried a couple of different types of salts to find to really coarse, and my favourite is the coarse salt because it gives a better effect. On certain pages, if I was doing like waves and stuff, I'd probably use more of a fine salt. But again, you have to leave this to dry completely, otherwise the technique won't work. But you can see all the little splatters there on the page. I just think it's fantastic. I'm really happy with this. I really do hope that you enjoyed the video, and again, apologies for not being in frame for the whole of the time. Hope you have a nice day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.